Microsoft, which these entities can piggyback on.
Yeah, okay.
And so that hopefully should reduce some of the customer acquisition costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah. So that sort of is a combination of the market taxonomy or description of the segments and the product lines and the sort of growth dynamics linked to each in response to your first question.
Yeah. So I think in terms of second question, as you were leaning towards, having bundled products with Polo network and managed hosting is good defensive play, and I'm assuming that allows Paulson or Clarinet, these players, to keep the customer because they are bundled. But in terms of churn, we do still see churn to different players, or because it's in housing or they go bankrupt or so on. But I guess that is part of what everyone sees, and nothing that, as long as it's a market churn, we shouldn't really, because that's just part of life, isn't it?
Yes and no. Let me break my response up into three component parts. It's worth going back to that structure of what is a defensive play and what is an offensive play. So those are two of the three components. The third is sales, solution, and operational capabilities, which are extremely critical for someone like a Pulsant or indeed a Clarinet to survive and grow. Coming to churn, when you look at pure play co-location, churn is triggered by two or three, and usually it's two proximate events. For a co-location provider like Pulsant, if their immediate customer, if the contracted customer is a managed service provider, i.e. like a Clarinet or let's say an IBM or whoever, who rent capacity for multiple end customers, and if those end customer contracts come to an end, then Pulsant gets hit with a customer churn, a managed service provider customer churn, without much visibility. So that's always quite dangerous, and in the industry, those sort of churns have been known to be market-moving events because they tend to be fairly large contracts, and the visibility into that is really poor unless you have a really switched-on account management team, which in fact is one of the requirements in terms of sales, solutioning, and operational capabilities, which I will come to in a moment in terms of the three components I described earlier. The second proximate cause of churn is when you have a customer who's so the way co-location contracts work, and forgive me if you already know this, but co-location contracts are written up on a fixed term of 3 years or 5 years, with then a rolling clause. But they are pegged to a fixed amount of kilowatts or a fixed amount of space or a number of racks. Okay. Now, it used to be space and number of racks, but as power density started increasing, the cost of the equation started going up for co-location providers, and so they moved their pricing model to kilowatts rather than square feet or square meters or number of racks. Okay. Because the power density started going up from 1 kilowatt per rack to, in some cases, 10 kilowatts per rack. So the economics don't work out unless you link it to a number of kilowatts.
Okay.
But either which way, I mean, these are sort of the three pricing models. But at the end of the day, the point is, whether it is square feet or whether it is racks or whether it is kilowatts, if a customer has contracted to utilize a certain amount of capacity, as I said, whether that capacity is expressed in kilowatts or square feet or racks, and if that capacity is underutilized for an extended period of time in terms of the contract, you can bet your bottom